The first gunshot shattered the morning stillness, and Olivia Jenkins ducked instinctively behind a water barrel as bullets splintered the wood of her family's general store. The year was 1875, and Silver Creek, Wyoming was no longer the peaceful frontier town she had grown up in not since Harmon Fletcher and his mining company had set their sights on her father's land. "Pa!" Olivia screamed, her honey-brown hair falling loose from its pins as she scrambled across the porch on her hands and knees. Inside, she found him slumped against the counter, clutching his bleeding arm. At 22, she'd seen her share of frontier hardships, but nothing had prepared her for the ruthless campaign Fletcher had waged against her family these past 6 months. "I'm fine, Livy," Thomas Jenkins grimaced, though the pallor of his face told a different story. "Just a graze. But they're getting bolder. We need to get you to Doc Wilson," she insisted, tearing a strip from her petticoat to bind his wound. Olivia helped her father to his feet, her mind racing. Their store was all they had left after her mother had passed 2 winters ago. The Jenkins General Store served as both their livelihood and the last piece of their family legacy. Outside, the sound of approaching horses made her stiffen. She peered cautiously through the window to see Fletcher's men riding away, their laughter carrying on the wind. One of them turned to fire a final shot that took out their store sign, sending it crashing to the ground. "This ain't over, Jenkins," the leader called out. "Next time, we won't be aiming to miss." The threat hung in the air like gunsmoke as Olivia helped her father toward Doc Wilson's office. This was the 3rd attack this month. Fletcher wanted their land for the rumored silver deposits beneath it, and he had made it abundantly clear he would stop at nothing to get it. 2 days later, Thomas Jenkins developed a fever. The bullet wound had festered, and despite Doc Wilson's best efforts, Olivia found herself standing beside a fresh grave as the autumn wind swept across the cemetery on the hill overlooking Silver Creek. "I'm so sorry, Miss Jenkins," Mayor Burke said, his hand heavy on her shoulder. "Your pa was a good man." Olivia barely heard him through her grief. As the small gathering of townsfolk dispersed, leaving her alone with her thoughts, she made a silent promise to her father that she would protect what he had built, no matter what Fletcher threw at her. That resolve was tested the very next morning when Fletcher himself strode into her store, his expensive suit and gold watch marking him as a man unused to being denied. "Miss Jenkins," he said, removing his hat with practiced courtesy that didn't reach his cold eyes. "I was sorry to hear about your father's passing." "Were you?" Olivia replied, her voice steady despite the fury coursing through her veins. "Considering it was your men who shot him, I find that hard to believe." Fletcher's smile tightened. "A regrettable misunderstanding. I've come to make you an offer, one that would honor your father's memory. I'll buy this store and the land it sits on for a fair price. You could move east, perhaps. A young woman like yourself shouldn't be alone in a place like Silver Creek. This store isn't for sale, Mr. Fletcher." "Not now, not ever." Fletcher's facade of politeness crumbled. "You'll find running a business in these parts difficult without help, Miss Jenkins. Supplies might not make it through. Customers might find other establishments more welcoming. I suggest you reconsider my offer while it still stands." After he left, Olivia locked the door and allowed herself a moment of despair. She knew Fletcher's threats weren't idle. He owned half the town already and had the sheriff in his pocket. But she wouldn't be driven from her home. True to his word, Fletcher began his campaign to break her. Shipments of goods mysteriously disappeared or arrived damaged. Customers dwindled as rumors spread that the Jenkins store was cursed with bad luck. The bank called in her father's loan, giving her 30 days to repay or forfeit the property. Each morning, Olivia opened the store with diminishing hope, but refused to let the townsfolk see her falter. Each night, she tallied the meager earnings and calculated how long she could hold out. 3 weeks after her father's death, as Olivia was closing up for the night, she heard the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. She ran to the back room just in time to see a flaming torch land among the dry goods. Fire spread rapidly across the wooden shelves. No. She screamed, grabbing a blanket to beat at the flames. But it was too late. The fire had caught and smoke was filling the small store. Coughing, she stumbled toward the door, her eyes stinging. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders, pulling her into the night air just as the windows of the store exploded outward from the heat. "Easy there," a deep voice said, steadying her as she gasped for breath. "Are you hurt?" Olivia looked up through tear-filled eyes at her rescuer. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that reflected the dancing flames. A stranger, dressed in the practical garb of a cowboy, but with a presence that commanded attention. "My store," she choked out, watching as everything her family had built was consumed by fire. "They've taken everything." The bucket brigade arrived too late to save the structure. By dawn, only smoldering ruins remained of Jenkins' general store. "Terrible accident," Sheriff Mills declared, not meeting Olivia's accusing gaze. "Probably a lamp left burning." "It was no accident," Olivia argued, her voice hoarse from smoke. "It was Fletcher's men. They threw a torch through my window." The sheriff shuffled uncomfortably. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Jenkins. Do you have any proof?" She didn't, and they both knew it. "I saw it too," the stranger who had pulled her from the fire spoke up. "Saw a man running away just as the fire started. Couldn't make out his face, but he sure wasn't stopping to help." Sheriff Mills eyed the newcomer with suspicion. "And you are Quint Rhodes?" "Just passing through on my way north." "Well, Mr. Rhodes, I suggest you keep passing through and leave local matters to local folks." When the sheriff left, Olivia turned to her rescuer with gratitude. "Thank you for trying, Mr. Rhodes, and for saving my life." "Call me Quint," he replied with a gentle smile that softened his weathered features. "And I only spoke the truth. I'm sorry about your store." "So am I," she said, looking at the ruins of her life's work. "But Fletcher won't stop until he has my land." "This Fletcher sounds like a man who needs to learn some manners," Quint observed, his voice hardening. "He's not a man you want to cross," Olivia warned. "He owns half this town and most of the men in it." Quint's eyes held hers, and something in his steady gaze gave her strength. "What will you do now?" It was a question she hadn't allowed herself to consider. With the store gone, she had no income, nowhere to live, and no way to fight Fletcher's claim on her land. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I won't give him what he wants." "Good," Quint nodded. "The way I see it, a person's spirit is all they truly own in this world. Everything else can be taken, but not unless you let them." His words struck a chord within her. He was right. Fletcher might have destroyed her store, but he hadn't broken her yet. "You have somewhere to stay?" Quint asked. She shook her head. "The store had living quarters in the back. Mrs. Peterson at the boarding house might have a room," he suggested. "I've been staying there myself." Mrs. Peterson did indeed have a room to spare, though her eyes darted nervously when Olivia explained her situation. "I can offer you a week, dear, but after that." She left the implication hanging. Everyone in town knew crossing Fletcher meant consequences, and no one seemed willing to stand beside Olivia in her fight, no one except this stranger who had appeared as if from nowhere. Over the following days, Olivia discovered that Quint Rhodes was more than just a passing cowboy. He had a quiet competence about him that spoke of a man who had seen his share of struggles and come out stronger for them. He'd been a ranch hand, a cavalry scout, and most recently had worked cattle drives from Texas to Montana. "What brought you to Silver Creek?" she asked one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch. It's hardly on the way to anywhere. Quint's expression grew thoughtful. Let's just say I was following a hunch. A hunch about what? About finding something worth stopping for, he replied, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Fletcher's right-hand man, a surly fellow named Dawson, who delivered a message from his employer. Mr. Fletcher extends his condolences on your recent misfortune, Dawson said with a smirk. He's prepared to purchase your land for half his original offer, considering there's nothing left on it of value. Olivia stood, her fists clenched at her sides. You can tell Mr. Fletcher that my answer hasn't changed. The land isn't for sale. He thought you might say that, Dawson sighed, as if disappointed. Which is why he wanted me to remind you that without your store or your pa, you've got no means to pay the property taxes due next month. The county will seize it and Mr. Fletcher will buy it at auction for pennies. After Dawson left, Olivia paced the porch in frustration. He's right. I have no way to pay those taxes. In 4 weeks, I'll lose everything anyway. Quint had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he spoke up. What if you rebuilt? With what? I have no money, no supplies. You've got friends you don't even know about yet, Quint said with a confidence that made her want to believe him. And you've got me. Why would you help me? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't even know me. I know enough, he replied. I know you're fighting for something that matters, and I know what it's like to lose everything and have to build it back from nothing. There was a story there, she could tell, but he didn't elaborate and she didn't press. Instead, she found herself agreeing to his proposal. They would rebuild the store better than before, and they would do it in time to secure her future. The next morning, Quint rode out at dawn and returned with a wagon full of lumber. Got it from the sawmill over in Jasper Creek, he explained. Owner there has no love for Fletcher either. Word spread quickly that Olivia Jenkins was rebuilding, and Fletcher's response was swift. The lumber supplier from Jasper Creek sent a panicked message that he could provide no more materials. The local bank refused to extend any credit. Even Mrs. Peterson, kind as she was, informed Olivia that she would need to find other accommodations by the end of the week. He's trying to isolate you, Quint observed as they used what little lumber they had to frame the new store's foundation. Make you feel like you're fighting alone. Aren't I? Olivia asked, wiping sweat from her brow. The work was hard, but it felt good to be doing something tangible. Not as long as I'm here, Quint assured her. Then, with a mysterious smile, he added, and not as long as there are good people who remember your father's kindness. The next day, Olivia discovered what he meant when a wagon arrived from the neighboring ranch, loaded with timber and supplies. My pa said Thomas Jenkins gave him credit during the drought of '68 when no one else would, the young driver explained. Said it's time to return the favor. More help arrived in the following days. An elderly woman brought a basket of food, explaining that Olivia's mother had nursed her through pneumonia years ago. A group of miners showed up one morning to help with the construction, each with a story about how the Jenkins store had extended them credit or fair prices when times were hard. See, Quint said as they worked side by side. You're not alone. Fletcher may own the town, but he doesn't own the hearts of its people. As the new store began to take shape, Fletcher's tactics grew more desperate. Anonymous threats were nailed to their partially constructed door. One night, someone poisoned the well behind the property. When that failed to deter them, Fletcher's men returned with guns, firing warning shots to scatter the workers. This has gone far enough, Quint declared after that incident, his expression grim. It's time to have a conversation with Mr. Fletcher. He won't listen, Olivia protested, And I won't have more blood on my hands. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you too." Quint's face softened at her concern. "I don't plan on giving him the chance to shoot me. But every man has a weakness, even Harmon Fletcher. I aim to find his." Before she could object further, he squeezed her hand and rode off, leaving Olivia to wonder when this mysterious cowboy had become so important to her. In the weeks since the fire, Quint had become not just her ally but her confidant, her strength when her own faltered. She found herself watching for him whenever he was away, her heart lightening at the sight of him returning. While Quint was gone, Olivia continued working. The townspeople who had initially been too afraid to help now came in greater numbers, emboldened by the progress and by Quint's fearless example. By nightfall, the frame of the new store stood complete, twice as large as the original. Quint returned after dark, his expression unreadable as he dismounted his horse. "Did you find Fletcher?" Olivia asked, offering him a cup of coffee from the pot that simmered over their campfire. "I did," Quint confirmed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "And I found something else too. The reason he's so desperate for your land." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded document. "This is a geological survey commissioned by the railroad. They're planning a new line through Silver Creek, and the only viable path crosses your property. Fletcher knows it would increase his property values tenfold if that railroad comes through." Olivia studied the map, her mind racing. "So it's not silver he's after at all. No, it's something far more valuable: progress. The railroad means prosperity for whoever controls the land it crosses." "How did you get this?" she asked, amazed. "Let's just say Fletcher's not the only one who can pay for information," Quint replied with a hint of a smile. "But that's not all. I also sent telegrams to some old friends. One works for the territorial governor now, another's a U.S. Marshal." Hope flared in Olivia's chest. "Will they help us?" "The marshal's on his way. He's been looking for an excuse to investigate Fletcher for some time. Seems your land baron has a history of similar tactics in other towns." For the first time since her father's death, Olivia felt the tide turning. With the store rebuilding and the prospect of justice on the horizon, she allowed herself to believe in a future beyond mere survival. That night, as they sat by the fire, Quint finally shared his own story, how he'd once owned a small ranch in Colorado, until a cattle baron much like Fletcher had driven him out, burning his home and killing his younger brother in the process. "I spent 2 years tracking him down," Quint admitted, his voice low. "Not to kill him, though I wanted to bring him to justice. When I finally succeeded, I swore I'd never let another man like him destroy innocent lives if I could prevent it." "Is that really why you came to Silver Creek?" Olivia asked softly. "You knew about Fletcher before you arrived, didn't you?" Quint nodded. "I'd been hearing stories. Thought I'd investigate, see if there was any truth to them. Then I saw the fire and I saw you, and suddenly it wasn't just about Fletcher anymore." His eyes met hers across the fire, and Olivia felt something shift between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first night. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." He moved closer, his hand gently touching her cheek. "I came here looking to fight a man like Fletcher. I didn't expect to find someone worth fighting for." Their moment was shattered by the sound of approaching horses. Quint was on his feet instantly, gun drawn, positioning himself between Olivia and the potential threat. Fletcher emerged from the darkness, flanked by Dawson and several armed men. "Quite the cozy scene," he sneered. "I'm almost sorry to interrupt." "State your business and move on, Fletcher," Quint demanded, his voice level but dangerous. "My business is with Miss Jenkins," Fletcher replied. "I've come to make one final offer before things turn ugly." Olivia stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Quint. There's nothing you can say that will change my mind. Perhaps not, Fletcher conceded with a cold smile, but circumstances have a way of changing minds. The county judge has issued an order for your arrest, Miss Jenkins. Seems you've been accused of arson, burning down your own store for the insurance money. That's absurd, Olivia exclaimed. You burned my store. Your word against mine, I'm afraid. And in this town, we know whose word carries more weight. Fletcher nodded to his men. Take her in. Quint's gun didn't waver. You're not taking her anywhere. The standoff was tense, neither side willing to back down. Then, unexpectedly, the sound of more horses approaching broke the silence. A group of riders appeared, led by a man wearing the unmistakable badge of a U.S. Marshal. What's going on here? The newcomer demanded, dismounting with fluid grace. Harmon Fletcher, I presume. Fletcher's confidence faltered visibly. Who's asking? Marshal Daniel Cooper, the man replied, showing his badge. I have a federal warrant to search your offices and records as part of an investigation into land fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy. This is outrageous, Fletcher sputtered. You have no jurisdiction here. Federal crimes mean federal jurisdiction, Cooper said calmly. And attempting to arrest an innocent woman on false charges won't help your case. Fletcher's men began to back away, unwilling to face off against federal law. Fletcher himself seemed to age before their eyes, his power evaporating in the face of authority he couldn't bribe or threaten. This isn't over, he hissed at Olivia, before turning his horse and riding away, his men following close behind. The marshal watched them go, then turned to Quint with a grin. Your telegram said it was urgent, old friend, but you didn't mention it involved a lady. Quint holstered his gun, relief evident in his expression. Thanks for coming so quickly, Dan. This is Olivia Jenkins, the woman I told you about. As the marshal and his deputies made camp nearby, promising to begin their investigation of Fletcher in the morning, Olivia found herself trembling with the release of tension. Quint noticed immediately and led her to sit by the fire again, draping his coat around her shoulders. It's really over, isn't it? She asked, hardly daring to believe it. Fletcher's days of terrorizing this town are numbered, Quint confirmed. The marshal won't leave until he's gathered enough evidence to put him away for good. Dawn broke over the half-built store, painting the new lumber gold. Olivia stood watching the sunrise, feeling as though she was witnessing the beginning of a new chapter not just for Silver Creek, but for herself. Quint joined her, his presence warm and reassuring at her side. Beautiful sight, he said, though his eyes were on her rather than the horizon. What happens now? She asked, turning to face him. Now we finish what we started, he replied simply. We rebuild your store, we make it stronger than it was before. And after that, her heart quickened at the possibility in his eyes. Quint took her hands in his. After that, if you'll have me, I'd like to stay. Silver Creek could use a man who knows how to handle horses. I thought I might start a small stable, help train mounts for the ranches around here. I'd like that, Olivia admitted, her voice soft with emotion. Over the next few weeks, as Marshal Cooper built his case against Fletcher, Olivia and Quint completed the new store. It rose proudly on the site of the old one, a symbol of resilience and community. The townspeople, freed from Fletcher's intimidation, flocked to help with the final touches. On opening day, the store was packed with well-wishers. A new sign hung above the door, Jenkins and Rhodes General Store, a testament to the partnership that had grown between them. As evening fell and the last customers departed, Quint locked the door and turned to Olivia with a smile. Your father would be proud. Of the store. Of you, he corrected, drawing her close. Of your strength, your determination. They tried to break your spirit, but you wouldn't let them. I had help, she reminded him, resting her head against his chest. "You said you'd build it back yourself, remember?" "And we did," he murmured, his lips finding hers in a gentle kiss that held the promise of all the tomorrows to come. 6 months later, as spring returned to Silver Creek, Olivia and Quint were married in a simple ceremony on the land her father had fought to protect. Fletcher was long gone, convicted of numerous crimes and sentenced to prison. The railroad had indeed come through, bringing prosperity to the town, prosperity shared by all, not hoarded by one man. The Jenkins and Rhodes General Store became the heart of the community, just as its predecessors had been. And above the counter, in a place of honor, hung a framed piece of charred wood, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been gained. In the years that followed, Olivia and Quint built a home behind the store and raised 3 children who grew up knowing the value of perseverance and the strength that comes from standing together against adversity. Their oldest daughter eventually took over the store, continuing the legacy her grandfather had begun and her parents had fought to preserve. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quint surprised Olivia with a small silver locket. Inside was a tiny piece of paper with the words he'd spoken to her that first night. "A person's spirit is all they truly own in this world. You never let them break yours," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "That's when I knew I loved you." "And you helped me rebuild everything else," she replied, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "That's when I knew I loved you." Together, they had transformed tragedy into triumph, discovering along the way that sometimes the strongest structures are built from the ashes of what came before. In a land as wild and unpredictable as the West, they had found in each other a shelter against any storm, a love as enduring as the mountains and as constant as the prairie stars that watched over Silver Creek.